Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Civic Tech 101. My name is Tariq Shepard, and I am co-organizer of Code for Atlanta. And by the end of this conversation, you should have an understanding of what Civic Tech is, Code for America's position in this movement, and how folks like us are contributing from across the country in our local communities. Today, I have with me two great folks from Code for America, M. Burnett and Melanie Masnick, and we are going to discuss this throughout the conversation. And so to start it off, I would love for Em and Melanie to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Tariq. My name is M. Burnett. I use they, them pronouns, and right now my title is Senior Community Manager with the network team at Code for America. I also have been a brigade organizer at Open Maine and am a former National Advisory Council representative.
Thanks, Em. My name is Melanie Masnick. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently the Associate Director of Delivery-Driven Government for Code for America. So that means I work on knowledge management related to Code for America's principles and practices. I've previously been a brigade volunteer in Code for Philly, Code for Asheville. I attended Shy Hack Night when I lived in Chicago, and then I started with Open Cleveland. And I was also on the National Advisory Council for the Brigade Network for a little while.
Nice. Well, thank you both for being here for this conversation. I think one of the best starting points for us would maybe to discuss, how we got started in Civic Tech. And so maybe, Em, would you be comfortable starting us off with that conversation?
Yeah. So I kind of came to Civic Tech from the political space. My origin story is I had worked on political campaigns, and the way that usually goes is you work really, 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 really hard, get people elected, and then sometimes you get invited to work in government. And that ended up happening. I was lucky enough to have worked with all these local candidates, and I was assisting them a lot with technology, getting their word out on social media, which at the time was kind of a new-ish thing. And when they got elected, I was offered a job at the Maine State House. And one of the questions I asked in the interview was, well, so I helped these people get elected using social media, and I notice how poorly designed the website is for what they're actually going to be doing in government. I noticed that none of them have social media pages. Like, would that be something I could work on? That seems like a really key thing in government. And they kind of responded that that wasn't part of the job. That wasn't something that they saw as important at that time. And so I declined the job and came home, and I just remember Googling something along the lines of government innovation technology or something, and found Jen Palka's TED Talk. This was back in the early days, like 2012. And the Brigade Network had just started forming, so I kind of signaled my interest in getting involved then. Since then, like, my activity has kind of been, I took some breaks over the years, but I came back again in 2016 and have been pretty deeply involved since then.
Yeah, I got my start in a kind of similar and kind of different way. I was in graduate school in Cleveland, earning my master's degree in public administration, and I had a music degree for my undergraduate, and I thought I was going to end up in like arts education, maybe working on education policy. And then I was working, doing internships in nonprofits in Cleveland at the time, and I noticed just how much they seemed to struggle with technology. And how, we had, super ancient databases that were older than me. And, how there were like huge kind of treasure troves of data we weren't really using that well. And then I also ended up looking at city and county procurement websites and just really struggling, to be honest, to use them. And so I got really interested and curious in nonprofit and government technology, and kind of trying to understand why it seemed to be that, nonprofits and governments had a harder time with websites and databases than for-profit organizations. And so I ended up, kind of hearing about my local Code for America Brigade in Open Cleveland and attending some meetups. And then I also sort of took a sharp left turn into tech. I had never really been like a tech inclined person, but I ended up taking some computer science and data science courses and then going to a coding boot camp and working in tech, all with the goal of being able to work on public interest technology.
Nice. I think my story is kind of a mix of the both of you as well. I was working when I first moved down here to Atlanta. I was working on a project that was north of the city. And if you know anything about Atlanta, you know, coming back south from north after work is insane. I mean, it can take you an hour, hour and a half just to get 10 miles. And so I would be going north to Alpharetta and I would work for the day and then I'd come back and we would just repeat this cycle every day for weeks, months for this particular project. And honestly, I got a little bored and I wanted to figure out what can I do outside of this to, you know, entertain myself or even better, you know, do something positive for my community. And I kind of did the mix of, let me get on Google, let me find something. And I still don't know exactly what I was Googling, but I also found a meetup like you did, Melanie, for Code for Atlanta. And it was the perfect excuse to ask to leave early every 2 weeks, about an hour. And so I also started riding the train more so I could get into the city quicker. I came to a meetup. They were doing a really cool project that I thought was somewhat related to experiences that I had. And I never left. And so this was in very early 2018. And so we're going on about 4 years of my involvement with my particular brigade, which has been exciting. And I think the motivation to do something positive where I live and just in my community was probably one of the biggest things that kept me around so far. But I think also the Brigade Network and having these individual groups across the country makes it for a very easy entry point into this particular sector of technology. And so for that one, I would ask, of course, we all started here as volunteers, but you both are now full-time employees at Code for America. And so between your experience with your local brigade and then your other experience, such as being a National Advisory Council member and things like that, what has really kept you around with this organization in particular?
I could take this one. So for me, I have noticed that a lot of other kind of civic tech and public interest tech organizations are really focused on government, and like the way to work on that is to win government contracts. And then because, you know, government contracts take so much management overhead, and federal contracts are kind of the largest and most stable, a lot of the civic tech efforts out there seem to be really hyper-focused on like large federal government contracts. And so for me, I think Code for America kind of takes a different view. And I think we sort of see government as part of a whole, as, you know, one element of a person's experience, you know, maybe trying to get their record expunged or trying to get access to safety net benefits. And so I see that Code for America kind of is uniquely focused on building a movement, because we know that changing public services to be human-centered is bigger than any one organization or contract, and you know, spans across all levels of government and into community organizations and direct service nonprofits.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I think I really got more involved and have stuck around because of the community. And similar to other civic tech organizations or spaces, there's not as much of an actual community. There's kind of a very defined goal or project or something. And I started becoming much more involved once I went to Brigade Congress, which was a space where kind of prior to joining, I felt, you know, I'm not a developer. I don't have like that specialized of tech skills, had a lot of imposter syndrome about where I fit in civic tech. And then coming to Brigade Congress and meeting people who, you know, were talking about open data sets and transparency in local government, and kind of using really creative methods of talking about all these things, playing games, and just having like a really a lot of passion for all of this. And I felt like, all right, these are these are my people. Like I do belong here. And I think that's kind of the glue that keeps everybody here in a lot of ways, is just the actual community feel.
I'd love to hear that. So while we're speaking about in specific Code for America's position in this area of technology, I know just from my personal knowledge that Code for America does employ about 150 individuals now, and it is very distinct from other civic organizations. One, I think because of the large community of volunteers that we have, the advocacy that goes into the product work that is happening here, and then also the ability to allow folks to, I would say, advocate and be experts for their own needs. But I think that isn't always how it started. I know Code for America has a very unique history that I love hearing about all the time. And so, are either one of you educated on maybe the history of Code for America and how we've shifted over time? Because I know from what Code for America started years ago is significantly different now. In particular, how, the original, shapings of the org were, but then also what it's now we see as the Brigade Network and then the Code for America organization. Can anyone speak to that transformation for a few seconds?
I can, what do you think?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I think the early days, and this is obviously going to be more focused on the network, which has always been part of the organization, well, or it was from the first or second year of the organization. I think it represents a shift in what we call civic technology too, being one of the larger organizations in that space. Back in 2012 or 2011, this might have been called Gov 2.0. And I think the origins were very focused on government and on like this shiny, beautiful idea that bringing tech talent into government is a way to fundamentally transform how people access services. And that was reflected in our fellowship program from the beginning, where people kind of did a kind of a stint in government. And that's reflective of some very real elements of kind of tech saviorism that have evolved since then. So the early days of kind of like parachuting in, the early brigade program was all about adopting products, about like bring this texting program to your city that alerts residents if something's wrong. And I think pretty early on, it was clear that some of that didn't quite stick. And of course, the move fast mentality of tech when interacting with government didn't move fast or just plain didn't work in a lot of cases. So CFA is a great example of how all of that experience has really evolved since then. So the fellowship program is probably the best example. So starting out with a promotion of people with technology skills, Google staffers, people with like very specific kind of high achieving backgrounds, bringing them into government. Now what we have is a community fellowship that actually places the most emphasis on people who have some tech experience, but also come from a background of having lived experience in an issue. So someone who actually has lived experience in housing insecurity is working to develop an app to help people who are experiencing homelessness. That's probably the best example of how we've evolved over the years. And the Brigade Network has evolved with that, and we're continuing to evolve. But now I think we see a lot more of our kind of dialogue and the projects we create reflective of the fact that, okay, we can't just copy A into B. We can't just take something that Cleveland made and drop it into Philadelphia and assume that it's going to work and that all we need is development talent. So there's a lot of lessons in there, and there's a lot of things that we're continuing to kind of adopt, but our founding DNA still does have some of that, kind of tech forward mentality ingrained in it.
I love that. It's It's very cool to hear about the early origin of Code for America, in particular the fellowship, because recently, the White House just announced the U.S. Digital Corps, which is to take early career technologists and actually place them in different government agencies. And I can only think that Code for America's early fellowship model is somewhat of a precursor to that particular program. And so way before its time, and I think that's just always been a very innovative way to use technology, the way that Code for America does for government now. So love that. Thank you, Em. You mentioned the Brigade Network, and it's something that we've been dancing around, that we've been talking about for a few minutes. But maybe we could spend a few seconds maybe explaining a little more in depth what exactly this expansive network of technologists across the country is. I think for a lot of folks that come into Code for America, especially as volunteers who have not really been affiliated with the brigade, they kind of hear this terminology, they hear, this term thrown around a lot, but I think there's still some people who may not necessarily know exactly what that is. And what I mean is for them in their community. All three of us have talked about using this as an entry point into civic tech, but I don't know if we've truly explained what it is. And so I think what I'll do is I'll give my explanation of what the Brigade Network is. And then, of course, you can inevitably follow up and correct me after I butcher it. But for me, the Brigade Network is a community of technologists across the country who are connected centrally through this idea of Code for America. And so, Em, as you mentioned, we started with this fellowship program, about 10 years ago, really, where we took technologists and placed them in a stint in government somewhere across the country. And they would work on projects, and of course they would, make an impact on whichever community that they were in. I know from that piece that there were a lot of folks who were in the fellowship program. After their tenure in their roles, they did start local groups as well to continue doing this work wherever they went back to or wherever they were. And from that point, we've kind of multiplied to nearly every state, and a lot of states have multiple brigades, but essentially it's like a chapter of Code for America technologists across the country. So we have these folks, like you both have mentioned, who have particular skill sets, particular experiences, particular interests, and they want to do something to improve their local community. And we use technology as an enabler of that improvement. And so what we see now in 2021 is, I don't have the exact number, but I'm pretty sure we have nearly 80 brigades dispersed across the country who, under their own, operations, their own local leadership, they pick up this type of work, they initiate this type of work, and they use their skills to make a positive impact where they live. So for example, here in Atlanta, where I'm an organizer of this brigade, we have been doing a project recently that I know a lot of folks in the Brigade Network had heard about, but we did a project called Atl Scribes. And so we had a group of folks who recognized that in the pandemic and just in general, now that folks are no longer attending city council meetings in person, the way to voice your opinion is to call and leave a voicemail, which is, in my opinion, relatively inefficient because that could be a high volume of voicemails to listen to get your concerns out to your representatives here in the community. And so what the Atl Scribes project did was they took that call data, so the actual transcripts of calls and the recordings, and they would, one, just transcribe it into something that you could read, something that was legible. And then I think the second part that we were working on was, of course, this idea of trying to figure out, now that we have this information and this data, what are the sentiments? But that's just an example of a project that came out of the Brigade Network that was really, useful in our community. And so I would say that's what a brigade is, a group that identifies something that needs to change or something that needs to be impacted locally, and they use their skills to work on it and to improve it. And so, Melanie, I know that you've been affiliated with many brigades, and you also have been a leader with the more national Brigade Network. So to you, what is this Brigade Network?
Yeah, Tariq, I think you covered a lot of it. So thank you for that great introduction. Yeah, it was really, yeah, I think you identified also the beginnings of it with the fellowship, kind of inspiring people to want to continue this work locally. And I'll add the brigade, where that word is coming from is inspired by volunteer fire departments. Actually, in the first one, I walk by it sometimes. It's here in Philadelphia. So the idea, I think, is that, volunteers can come together and do something for their community. We can fill in some of the gaps that might not be otherwise covered by paid technology work. So one example of a project that I really admired, not something that I worked on personally, was healthcare roll call. So this was in Baltimore, and it was during the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, when the city was needing to kind of pay attention to and keep tabs on like group living facilities, like senior housing facilities. And the city ended up working with Code for Baltimore to develop an application where I think medical students, I want to say, at Johns Hopkins could kind of update the data in an application about COVID cases in these senior living facilities. And that way the city leadership could kind of keep tabs on the situation and be able to kind of monitor how people are doing and how how COVID is spreading. So that was an example of, I think, something I really like about that example, and a direction that I see the Brigade Network moving in is more toward partnership and kind of identifying identifying who to work with, who to have a big impact. So Code for Baltimore worked with the city to identify their needs, and then also kind of knowing that this was a really important application and really needed to be kind of accurate and up to date. Was having the data being updated by people who had some expertise and understanding in this area. And so I think it shows a real kind of sophistication that we've gotten to as a network, kind of past just sort of launching an application and hoping people will discover it and use it, and kind of towards really identifying like what is the need, who needs this, who will use it, and partnering to make sure that the work we're doing is effective.
Melanie, you used one word that particularly stuck out to me, and you said with. And one of the things that has always resonated with me throughout my experience in the Brigade Network is that I can't remember where I heard it or who said it, but I believe that at one point somebody said, we work with, not for. And I always thought it was powerful, because when you do work like this, I think there's always this idea of, oh, what is the goal? Who is this for? What are you doing this for? But what I've always seen in the Brigade Network is that projects are definitely with. We work with community partners. We work with organizations that have already been doing, a lot of things in a particular space. We work with communities that have experience with certain issues and problems. And so just you saying that Code for Baltimore worked with the city of Baltimore on this particular project was just something that I think, as a brigade member myself and a member of this broader network, I think that's something that I always try to remember with any work that we're doing. Who are we doing this with? And I just wanted to recognize that you used some language that was particularly outstanding to me. And so thank you both for commenting on this piece. And so where we're at right now with the Brigade Network, what I want to do is maybe just explain a little bit about how folks can get involved. And I know that there's a lot of action happening right now. And so once I do that, I'm going to come back to you to maybe touch on this new thing called revisioning that some people may not be up to date on. And so if you've been interested in what we've discussed so far about Code for America, and specifically this Brigade Network, I want everyone to know that there's certainly a space for you in this community. As you can probably hear through our conversation, a big theme about Code for America experience as a volunteer is that this brigade network is highly local. And so Code for America, of course, is central as a common connector, or as M mentioned, a community of folks across the country that we engage with and that we connect with. But this is something that you can do wherever you are. But in particular, your local community can especially be affected by these works. And so for anyone that's interested, they're probably thinking, how do I get involved? Because it seems like this has been a very non-traditional path for the three of us of how we actually stumbled upon across it. So I want to say it's totally easy. And so what we have now is, considering the transformation that Code for America has taken on in the past few years, it makes it very easy for you to figure out and identify opportunity for involvement in your community. And so, of course, Code for America has a website. And so one thing that I always encourage folks to do is read up on the literature and what's available. And so talking about the brigades maybe does not encompass the true strength and magnitude of what these folks and what these partners and these organizations do across the country. And so I always encourage folks to just browse the Code for America website for content and for resources. So Code for America is very great at publicizing and sharing the successes of this community and this network. And so you can always go online and see what we've been up to. There are always new blog posts, new interviews, new things on YouTube. And so if you're interested in hearing more about specific projects, specific activities, the content is there available for you. But the biggest thing that you could do is, if you want to get involved, you can actually go on the Code for America site and you can check and see if there's a local brigade near you or where your nearest brigade is. I will say in the past year and a half, it has been considerably more accessible for folks to get involved, considering that a lot of brigades have moved into a very remote, or for some brigades, a safe hybrid model for participation. And so if anyone has ever heard in the past, we do recognize that a lot of us used to meet in person and we used to collaborate side by side. And now we do this with technology. So we do a lot of virtual meetings, we work asynchronously. And so at this point, regardless of your location, you can get involved if you would like to. There's also this other community. And so just like any other tech organization, we use Slack a lot, like a lot of groups. But in this Slack application, we have different channels that you can join that are differentiated by topic area, maybe by location, by region. But as you get into those, there are different resources that you will come across and different folks that you may meet that could really get you started on your journey in the civic tech space. But one of the really cool things that I love about Code for America that M also mentioned is this broader community is certainly available for networking and volunteer opportunities, but we do a big effort to get together in some form or fashion multiple times a year, which includes the Code for America Summit. So that is an annual conference that we have, and the location changes. Sometimes it may be on the East Coast, sometimes it may be on the West Coast, but this year it was actually entirely virtual and it was a great experience. But the Code for America Summit brings together a lot of leadership from civic tech, public interest tech, from government organizations, and of course, individuals from nonprofits, and even our brigade network. And it's a great conference. You come together, you learn a lot, folks present, you do some skill building and development. But when you walk away, you definitely feel more in tune with the current status of the civic tech movement and industry as a whole. More specific to the Brigade Network, we do another conference every single year called Brigade Congress, which I'd like to say is a conference for us by us. It is planned by the Brigade Network, it is hosted by the Brigade Network, and it is attended by the Brigade Network. And so this is really our time each year to come together, unify, because we are relatively fragmented across the country throughout most of the year, but this time we get to come together for a weekend, a few days, And we do exactly what we do at any other conference. We host sessions, we have lightning talks, we have unconference sessions, which are impromptu education opportunities, and we have fun too. We'll go bowling, we'll go see a show. And it's really, really fun to come together at an event like that, which I will say a quick plug, Brigade Congress for 2021 is happening. And so this will be October 15th through 17th, entirely virtual, entirely free of cost. So anyone that would like to attend is definitely open to register for that event. And I will be there, and I'm sure Melanie and Em will also be there. And then additionally, one other thing that we do is we talked about these local projects and doing work in our communities, but there actually are many times where projects will rise up to a more national level and leverage the skills and capacity of folks from all across the country. So one of my favorite recent projects that had happened is called Get Your Refund. And I actually remember the very early days of this project when it was still in ideation. But to make a long story short, Get Your Refund is an initiative by Code for America that is going well into its second year, probably hitting 3 sometime soon. But the point is to connect families to benefits that they may not have known about or not had the opportunity to apply for. So I actually, at one point in my life, was somewhat of an accountant. And so there are tax credits that are refundable credits. So if you apply for it and you receive it, you get the cash back into your pocket. Well, there are multiple credits that folks may not know about, so they do not apply for, or they think that their status for some reason does not warrant them filing a tax return. And so Code for America has been at the forefront of moving forward with making sure that folks are educated and applying for benefits that they are entitled to and should receive. And I'm excited to also announce that there is a recent collaboration that just came out in the past few days about Code for America's status and certification with the IRS. So congratulations to Code for America on that one. But I say all of this to say Code for America and this Brigade Network is large. The impact has been scaled up so many times that I just cannot imagine a civic tech world without the impacts of Code for America. And I encourage everyone to seek out the resources and the opportunities that do exist. But I also say that recognizing that some things go through iterations. And I think what is happening right now with the Code for America Brigade Network is we are about to go through a season of positive change after a lot of hard work from many individuals that worked on something that we have called the revisioning process. And so, Em, I know you've been very close to revisioning in the past year, and I would love if you could take a few moments to explain to us the concept of revisioning and where we're going right now with that one.
Yeah. So revisioning is kind of a 10 years in the making project. And for people who are maybe new to the network, we're hoping to offer more opportunities and more ways to get involved, in addition to what Tyreek just mentioned around our various conferences. And one kind of proposed way that we might be adapting is when you come into the network, having really specific national actions to take part in. So National Day of Civic Hacking this year is piloting this partnership with Transform 911. And that is one way that someone who, maybe you don't have a brigade in your community, but you're really passionate about this, and you don't necessarily want to take on the burden of starting your own brigade, but you do have time to be involved somewhat. A national action team is something that we're proposing to create. And this pilot partnership with Transform 911 is one of those kind of first iterations of that. So we could expect, for instance, in a couple of years, new person comes in the door or comes in through our Slack workspace, and there are actually several national action teams that you can participate in. Melanie referenced this earlier around kind of changing the way that we make change. So earlier iteration being let's create an app and then hope that another city also uses that app. And maybe that app actually helps. That iteration has changed, and we recognize that actually, in some cases, the best way to make change is partnership. That's reflected in some of this revisioning process is essentially looking at what's actually happening in brigades. The case where we partner directly with a local government can be quite rare. Myself, other brigade leaders have tried partnering with local government, and the idea of having volunteers create custom software and maintain it, understandably, is not all that feasible for a lot of local governments. But those governments still need technical expertise. They still need guidance. And especially when they're writing, for instance, like an RFP to create a system, having that guidance can be really helpful. So we're kind of exploring partnership, not just in the realm of local government, but also with communities. So that's another thing that you might see changing over the next several years, is just how we make change and how we talk about that. And a third one is also related to some of the work that Melanie does, is sort of knowledge management and sharing. And so we're discussing this ability to create communities of practice. So you might come into a local brigade, maybe you're a data scientist who doesn't have a project to work on in your local brigade, but you have an interest in collaborating with and learning from other data scientists in the network. And that's kind of the purpose of these communities of practices. All of this is still being worked out. You know, we've been doing this really extensively over the last 6 months, talking to volunteers, and think that the changes are needed, necessary, and quite big. And we hope that for people coming in and joining the network, that this is just going to make the experience better, more impactful, and give you more ways to get involved.
Nice. Thank you for giving us that update, on revisioning effort. So, I've had a great time discussing our experiences and our perspectives on Code for America and Civic Tech while we've been doing this. But I want to kind of ask one more question, one big question. And so we've talked about why we got involved, why we've chosen to stick around with Code for America in our individual brigades. But I want to ask both of you, what is your favorite moment in Civic Tech? So if you have a favorite moment that you thought about, I would love to hear about it. But I can start and share mine. This was in 2019, so almost 2 years ago. So this was actually my very first Brigade Congress. I had never been to one before, and it was hosted in Cleveland, Ohio. And I was super excited to go. I was on the content committee, which gave me the opportunity to weigh in and help curate the content that was going to be presented at Brigade Congress. I also got to work on Unconference, which is the impromptu conference content that you kind of vote on and you pick the day of. I got to be a part of organizing that. And then I also just made a lot of really cool friends. And at that time, I think I needed something to really just lift my spirits and give me a lot of energy. And Brigade Congress did exactly that. I left that event feeling so refreshed, rejuvenated, and I was super excited to continue this work and to continue making friends and connections across the network. And the cutest thing happened in the airport. I had made a new friend and we were just waiting to fly back to Atlanta, and they had a layover there to fly back home to Florida. And so we're like, oh, maybe we should go to the gift shop and buy something from Cleveland. And on the way to the gift shop in the airport, we run into Stacey Abrams, who had run for governor in the state of Georgia. And I was just completely starstruck. And I still have this picture of me, my friend, and Stacey Abrams in the Cleveland airport. And it was just the perfect close to that weekend. And I will never, ever forget that Brigade Congress that I attended.
That's such a good story. I don't know if I have anything that compares. I'm gonna cheat and say my favorite moment is something that happens all the time but it is a moment. And I think for me, it's when I'm like working on something and really focused on what I'm doing. And then when there, is like tough news happening in the world, there's something that's making me feel like, maybe a little bit of despair or hopelessness. And when I'm, feeling worried and feeling like, what can I do? I'm just one person. And for me, it kind of what keeps me going is being able to kind of look up and see all of the other people around me doing all of this positive work and having bringing all of this energy and excitement to make change in their communities and make change nationally and, maybe globally. And I think, for me, being connected to Code for America and to the Code for America Network and all of the other volunteers, I know that, it's not one person that has to change the world, but it's all of us together, to be a little corny.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I think kind of similar pattern, but the thing that is most inspiring to me is getting to learn from each other and like these moments where, I know we talk about Code for America and the brigades being associated with it, but there's a lot of decentralization that happens and a lot of kind of reverence for open source and kind of a respect for ethical use of technology and being around people who all share that. We have these spaces, sometimes Brigade Congress, and we try to recreate them virtually as well, where one person who's kind of like off doing their own thing in a random city comes to a convening and then shares, they're working on a project and they're having a tough time with this, and this. Someone from a completely different place is in the same space and like this connection happens. And it's really beautiful to see, us being able to share ideas and, and it's also I mentioned, there's like a special sauce sort of that we're able to kind of get together and be very creative. It's not all a like Code for America branded. We've actually done some kind of off-brand things that are really fun, and you get to see that all at Brigade Congress. And one of the other cool parts of that, in addition to like the connections that get made, is there is nothing better than visiting a city and getting shown the city through the eyes of someone who just loves their city and is invested so much time in it. And there's inevitably someone who's like a total nerd about public transit and like loves all the maps and wants to show you like City Hall and then also their favorite community group. So that's a really beautiful thing. And this year's event in Tulsa is all virtual and it is in Tulsa. So I say that to mean like, yes, we're only joining on the computer, but they're bringing us Tulsa online. So that's a lot of local history, a lot of kind of sharing their history, their past, present, future. So I'm really excited for that event. And I think we're going to hope to recreate kind of some of the magic that is there in person.
I'm excited for it. And, I can't wait, to be honest. And so, as we close out this conversation, of course, I want to thank both of you for being here with me today to just have this nice light chat about our experience in civic tech. One thing that I would love to do is to close out this conversation with a quick pitch, maybe even a call to action. But if you were to give an elevator pitch about who should get involved in civic tech or why you should be involved with civic tech, do you know what you would say? Because I think I might know what I would say. What I would say is, if you're interested in using your skills, your capabilities, and your interests to improve your community, your government, and democracy for folks around you, I think this is an opportunity for you. If you're interested in meeting people that think similar to you, people that think differently, but everyone's heart and intentions are in the right place, this is probably something for you. And if you like being on top of innovation, you like to be at the intersection of public interest, government, and technology, this is probably the right thing for you. And then the last thing I would say is, if you want to hang out with me, this is probably the thing for you.
Yeah, I would add to that, kind of no matter who you are, this is for you, because I think the point of what we're doing here is to build a collaborative and inclusive movement, and to kind of bring the ethos of collaboration and inclusion and democratic decision making to the way we work on technology and the way we work on public service in and outside of government. So this is for you.
Love it.
Yeah. I don't know if I can add too much to that, but yeah, I think that we all are facing some really difficult challenges, especially in our wider world, in our government. And being involved in a brigade or in the national network is a way to do something to kind of utilize your skills and ideally also learn new ones, because those skills of governance, decentralization, kind of self-governance in particular, I think are going to be really helpful and needed in the years to come when we ultimately have to rely on our communities to survive in the world. So I'll leave it on that like high note. But
I love it. Well, every time we get together, I think it's always a great time, whether we're just casually together, whether we're working on something, I love to see both of you. And so with that, I really appreciate you both taking the time, and I'm excited to see you next month at Brigade Congress, October 15th through 17th, where we will virtually be in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, I hope you both take care. And again, thank you so much for being a part of this very fun and important conversation.
thank you. Great to talk with you.